Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane Mullins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for Friday, May 13th, 2022. I'm Kev Laramie and I'll be joined by Duane Mullins in just a second. Before, I will invite you to subscribe to our YouTube page as we plow through the journey to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you for your confidence and your trust and for joining us every single day right here on Twitter, on YouTube, on Soccer Today. Joining me as always, live from the T dot Toronto. Duane, how you doing today?
Doing well, but why do we stop at 1,000? Let's go for 1 million subscribers.
Sure. But you know, a million subscriber journey starts with 1,000 steps, and we're gonna start with the first 1,000 steps. Took us long enough to get there, anyways. Just like MLS, it took MLS 20-something years to be that good, and now they are doing pretty well this year. Maybe not top 10 clubs in the world. There's a ranking that one journalist does, Duane, in England, and I don't want to name the name because I think it's a bit stupid, but he ranks like his power ranking in the third. Like Rangers were like second, and like the Seattle Sounders were like sixth in the world. I was like, yeah, nah, that's not true.
No. Look, we're in 2022, and I've been to podcasting long enough to remember when Don Garber first said that he wanted MLS to be among the best clubs or the top leagues in the world. Is the language he used by 2022. We're here. I think he always meant by financials, not by skill on the field. But nonetheless, I don't think he quite hit that goal. But I don't think that goal was ever really real. It was just marketing, but that's fine. It's still a good league, and it's a league worth supporting, as we well know, and we do here all the time. But Don, 2022,
well,
maybe misspoke. 42?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it was a 42, but we're there now. Can you believe we're already in 2022? Let's have a look at Major League Soccer's 11th week, because that's where we are. Week 11, the third of the season almost, Duane, and let's have a look at this long schedule. By the way, the only place where we go through every single game with at least one line opinion and then deep dive on a few. MLS Week 11 schedule, Duane. Toronto-Orlando starts it tomorrow. Can Toronto overcome their slide? 3 straight losses in Major League Soccer against teams that they should have beaten. Is it the real Toronto? Will the real TFC please stand up?
Well, I think this is the real TFC. The real TFC is young and inconsistent, and they have a good goal scorer, which sometimes rescues them in games. And when they had their little hot streak before they had their cold streak, I think that Jimenez was the guy driving that with his ability to put the ball in the back of the net. And Pizuela was playing pretty decently, and then, things turn quick. You miss a penalty, you get a bad call on the break. In my opinion, a bad call on the break, and suddenly
the pro referee came out yesterday saying they might agree with you, saying, yeah, we might have erred on the side of mistake here.
Yeah,
on the Jadon Nelson goal that was called back.
Yeah, they didn't give us 2 points. Or didn't give them 3 points though, right? And take 2 off Vancouver.
No, that you can't do that. But you know, we said my bad. That's basically what they said after the play. Colorado LAFC. Speaking of a slide, will Colorado continue theirs? Will LAFC continue to be the best in the league so far? Vancouver San Jose. That's an interesting matchup. Both of these teams have won midweek in their respective cup games. In their National Cup Championship, Canadian Championship for Vancouver, they beat Valor 2-0, and San Jose were victorious in the US Open Cup. And they took that victory to heart with big social media presence saying, on to the round of 16. Definitely an objective for San Jose at this point to be the US Open Cup winner. That's a way to go to the CCL, and it's a way to make your season worth something. Vancouver thinks about the same thing about the Canadian Championship. So what does it mean for a league game between the two this weekend?
I mean, look, I think it's an important league game for both teams in terms of teams that Vancouver got off the mark, regardless of how they got there. They got their 3 points in the weekend against Toronto. They'll consider that a rivalry game, and 3 points that they badly needed. They need to continue that. San Jose made the coaching change. If they want to make something, then they're going to need some wins here now too. That's obvious talk. I'm glad to hear San Jose celebrating a cup win too. Clubs of that stature don't try in the U.S. Open Cup enough, because it is an opportunity to do something and actually be worthwhile in your marketing. And you can say that it doesn't have the big pull of, amongst the general sports fan, fine, but you need to reach the hardcore sports fan first. And there's MLS markets like San Jose where they're not. So do something to do that.
It's true. And I think San Jose might do a little bit of a squad rotation to make sure that they are fresh for that U.S. Open Cup competition that will continue. We'll see their choices on Saturday, 7 p.m. Charlotte, Montreal. I'm interested about this game for sure, not only because I'll be working it, of course, but because it's an expansion team that is doing okay. They had a surprising good beginning of the season, I would say, and then things got not necessarily rolling again. After his first 4 games of the season, Karol Swiderski, which is very good at Scrabble if you play that game, well, he had 4 goals after 4 games, which sounds really good, but it was 2 games of 2 goals, so it's skewed there. But none since. 6 games without the goal for the striker, and we'll see maybe Charlotte continue their slide slowly but surely outside the playoffs. Teams have corrected a little bit in the Eastern Conference, and Charlotte are the ones who are going to pay the price and go down that standings.
Yeah, look, we've seen this with a couple of the expansion teams that have been. I think we're skewed by the big result expansion teams, LAFC and Atlanta, obviously, thinking that, oh, you've got to start with a big bang. You do have to start fast because you do have the extra allocation, the allocation bump we talk about all the time. But to do it in one season requires a big spend up top. And I think Charlotte understands a little bit of what it's got there and is trying to build a bit of a skeleton before they go, okay, we need this and we need this and we need this. And then you build it up, you try and win in the second or third year. The Nashville model, which, and Nashville could win a championship this year based on their play so far. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst MLS Cup final ever, perhaps, but they could win it.
It wouldn't be necessarily entertaining either, but, it would be worthy because if you make it there, regardless of how you play, it's worth it. Beauty is not necessarily something that is important when you look at soccer and when you look at what you're looking for a successful team, especially in MLS. Sometimes the result is worthy more than how you get it done. Let's continue our look at MLS's Week 11 schedule. New York City FC at home against Columbus. To me, that's a statement game for NYCFC. They need to do a good result there. We know what they're capable of with Castellanos. And Castellanos, he scores in bunches. He's that type. He had a one game of 4 goals. I think there's a bunch coming this weekend. And if you're playing MLS Fantasy like I am, make him your captain. Because he's my captain this weekend. All on powder blue. That's what I'm going. I'm going to the roulette table, Duane, and I'm choosing powder blue. So the croupier is going to look at me and be like, sorry, sir, that doesn't exist. And I'll be like, it doesn't matter. Put it all on powder blue. Tati Castellanos for NYCFC at home in the phone booth of a stadium.
You could just put it all actually on New York City FC now that sports betting is legal in Canada, and we're reminded that every 3 seconds by advertising going down our throat.
Hey, it's only legal in Ontario for multiple places. Of course, in all the provinces, we have single event betting legal, and there's so many advertising everywhere. Like I know my stuff, and I'm like new places popping up. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah,
bet whatever. Bet insert 3 letters, and that's your new website.
Yeah, and if anyone is listening out there, we're happy to do a read. I really am. I have nothing against gambling altogether. We will happily do a read for you.
Duane, okay, you're going to say it? I'm going to put something on there too. So if you are looking for us and for advertising, we do have advertising opportunities, and you can contact us at sportspodcastingnetwork@gmail.com. Plug right here. Let's continue to look at that schedule for this weekend. Philly, New York. Philly, interesting team. Maybe the best team in the Eastern Conference. On paper, they are. We'll see if they can be that way. New York is also a great team. They're second, just in front of Montreal, because Montreal is third in the Eastern Conference. And for New York, well, it's also a statement game. They're better on the road than at home. So if I'm Philly, I'm worried about this game because New York's going to come and play very well. New York is the youngest team in the league, and this youngest team in the league has a 1.9 points per game average. In the league, second only in the Eastern Conference to Philly. Can the Red Bulls continue their run of form on the road?
Yeah, it's interesting that the road situation, and I saw it firsthand with the TFC's home opener when they blitzed TFC. It was 4-1, I believe the score was that game, and a hat trick in it. So, yeah, it's interesting that perhaps they're able to play their style tactically a little more freely on the road without any expectation of a crowd there. You can make your own attendance joke about Red Bull if you want, but
which I'm just going to explain to the layman what their tactic is they don't want the ball. They want you to have the ball. As soon as they have the ball, they're going to transition, go attack. If they don't have the ball, then it's fine. We don't need the ball. We just need the ball in transition and in the final third, which is, by the way, just like eating just dessert as your meal. You're cutting off most of the irritants of the game. And you're like, well, I just like the sweet spot.
Yeah, and look, it's hard to sustain over a course of an entire season without a huge budget, which is why Red Bull, I think, maybe sometimes doesn't get it done when at the end of seasons, but it's also effective in early parts of the season. It's effective, as we're saying, on the roads, and it's why Red Bull always makes the playoff. So it's a bit of both here. So look, New York, the East is weak. As we've said many times before, I think NYCFC and Philadelphia are the class there, and then the rest of the teams are kind of battling for 3 and down. So look, they if they get results now, those points, where do they get put, Kevin, when they're on the board? They're in the pocket.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say it differently every time now. So, but anyway.
But it counts. Points on the board. Points on the board. Points on the pocket.
Everything just went to a drop right there.
Here we have, of course, on our screen the standings, because we were talking about Montreal and New York and Philly. And New York is second in the Eastern Conference with the youngest team in MLS. We talked about their style, and it'll be interesting to look at the different type of players they have. I'm really high on Joel Tolkien, not only because he's bringing the mullet hairstyle back in trend, but also because I like his play. Is no nonsense type of play, and that is worth it to me sometimes. Not overcomplicating things, not always adapting to the opponent. Just play your game. Do what you do best. And that's... Did Usain Bolt talk about tactics while running? No. He was running the fast as he could, and nobody could catch up. Sometimes that's what you have to do. And to me, that's what New York does. They're playing their style. They're not apologizing for it, and they're just going to continue. Montreal could have 8th game unbeaten in 24 hours. They are playing against Charlotte, expansion team. Montreal comes in this as maybe the hottest team in the league, having a good result on the road, a fortress at Stade Saputo. And Montreal is showing that you can do it without big names. You can do it because of your tactics and how you play, and multiple players contributing. And of course, MVP favorite at this point, Georgi Mihailovic, continuing on his run of form in the league, being not only a great passer, but also a great scorer this year, Duane.
Do it without superstar big names, but you can't do it without stars in terms of how they're playing. You need folks that can produce offense in particular, and that's what Georgie is doing. And, MVP, we've talked at length about the challenges that he'd have to overcome to do that. He'd have to have an outstanding season that was clear to everyone around. I mean,
like not only an outstanding, but I would have to say like an undeniable season. Where nobody can say anything. You'd be like, okay, he scored like Josef Martinez in 2018 that his season. Like, well, he scores 20-something goals and then he prepares a whole lot. That would be undeniable.
Yeah, or like Javinko in 15, or or Villa. There are seasons that you just go, yeah, it's obvious. Even Hill last year, I think was pretty clear for most people. The only guess there was whether they'd split the vote a little bit, but nonetheless, speaking of which, New England, we'll get to them in a minute. They need to get moving, but yeah, look. Montreal's in a position where they can't slip below the line this week, and that's what you want to do, especially in a tight East. As long as you are 3 points within the line or 3 points from the drop, you're not safe or out of out in trouble, right? You're kind of still in there. You don't want to drop below the 3-point range, so that 6-point range there. You want to be able to jump into a playoff spot at any point, and you don't want to be able to drop out. And Montreal, as long as they can maintain a pace and get some points, they can stay in that level.
It's true, and to me, it's not a fluke. Because, Duane, we'll go back to our season preview, and I literally laid the blueprint of how this would happen. I literally explained the first 11 weeks of the season on our season preview, and so far so good, and I said Mihailovic would continue, and the trend is that he's going to do so, and I predicted Montreal in the MLS Cup final. Maybe he'll lose in the final, that's what I predicted, but no one's laughing at me anymore, which a few people did. Like in person. Like I walked into a control room a few months ago, and a technician looks at me, he's like, Montreal in the final, huh? They just lost like 2 games in a row. And I was like, yes, unwavering on my prediction. Turns out I was more right. All right, Miami DC United. This is not a game that I'm really going to be super excited for, but it is a game that's happening tomorrow at 8 p.m. Chicago Cincinnati. That one is interesting. Cincinnati is the best version of FC Cincinnati in their history in Major League Soccer. They can do great things, and maybe they can catch Chicago. Chicago's not great. They're not bad. Defensively speaking, they're still one of the best teams in the league with one of the best goalkeepers who's still top of the league with 5 clean sheets. But can Chicago get it done at home in a place where there's not a lot of support? Ain't 40,000 people showing up at Soldier Field yet, and it does show on the pitch. Cincinnati could get a surprising result here. On the road, Houston, Nashville, Salt Lake, Austin. What is catching your attention late Saturday?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Cincinnati, a surprising result. There comes a point if they keep getting results that they're no longer surprising, right? 2 of those wins were against a Toronto team that is struggling right now. So you kind of put that with a grain of salt. They have some wins against some other weak teams earlier, but this is an opportunity to beat the teams in front of you and get some points on the board. And that's what they need to do, because look, for that team, getting even close to a play, even being in the race at the end of the season would be a success and would be something to build on, because they have been so terrible. Like, I think I would go so far as to say, based on the points they have so far, I don't think they're going to win the wooden spoon. And that, congratulations, Cincinnati. You aren't the worst anymore.
Hey, before you start to win, you got to get off the bottom of the barrel. And they've done that. They're not at the bottom of the bucket. They've finally at least climbed a few rungs of that label, of that ladder. Am I going to use another analogy? I don't know. But good on you, Cincinnati. Let's continue to look at these games. Houston, Nashville. Salt Lake, Austin, that was mentioning. Late Saturday, tomorrow night will be fun night, and preparing hockey for me for probably the next couple days. But then looking at Portland, Kansas City. Kansas City needs to get his act together. So does Portland. We'll look at the Western Conference standings in a second. LA Galaxy, Dallas. Dallas? If Dallas gets a result, we're talking about a Galaxy team that is very up and down. It's like they are exactly like what is at the end of the Santa Monica Pier, which is like a roller coaster. They go up, they go down, they do well, they do bad. Vanny, I'm not impressed this year. All the Vannies in the league, I'm not impressed this year. So that's in LA, and that's also in Vancouver for Vanny Sartini. Atlanta, New England. You wanted to talk about New England. Atlanta keeping their head above water, even with maybe the biggest injury spell I've ever seen in Major League Soccer. And New England, well, they're not doing too good. They're just like that team that you thought had it going, and they started up. They have great players that are doing good. If you look statistically speaking, Cackless Hill Duane is in the top of a few categories that are usually influencing the result of games. But they're not. What's happening in New England is the message already not connecting for Bruce Arena and New England.
The only thing harder than repeating as MLS Cup champions in MLS is repeating as Support Shield champions. And that's a truism for going back to, I guess, the LA Galaxy did it 2 years in a row, about a decade ago now. But that's a different era of the league, right? And it just doesn't happen that often. And I think it has something to do just with the way rosters are built. And we talk about this a lot in the show, right? That MLS presents unique challenges. And it's such a fine line. You take a little bit out of it, and you can take a great team, a smoothly running like F1 car, put in the wrong spark plug. I'm not much of a motorhead, so forgive me if I'm getting the analogy wrong, but you put the wrong thing in there, but the tire pressure is just a little off. It's not running at the peak performance. And I think that's kind of what's happened with New England. They had Tajin last year. It's a guy that's very close to our heart. You take him out of that lineup, and it just takes that little tweak, and they're not quite as good. Now, look, the East has been kind to them. They are still within touching distance of the playoff spot. As long as they can get themselves settled, they might be able to present themselves for a back half of the season team. They can even, of course, add a piece in the summer coming up soon. July the 7th is when the window opens again. So you'll start to look for that in the month ahead or so for teams to gear up to get those big signings in. They're not out of it. And that's the beauty of the East. The West has a few teams that you can kind of count out already, but the East is pretty wide open, right down to the bottom. I wouldn't even put Chicago out yet.
No, exactly. And speaking of the Eastern Conference, let's have a look at the Eastern Conference standings as of Monday. It hasn't changed since Monday, so here we go. We talked about East of the West. LAFC still top of the West, 23 points. Austin second, 20 points. LA Galaxy third, 19, equal with FC Dallas. One of the surprises this year is FC Dallas and continuing to do well. We should have known with the arrival of Paul Arriola from DC United, one of the biggest acquisition in the offseason. One of the biggest transfer, even if it's allocation, in FC Dallas history. And of course, they transferred out Ricardo Pepi, which they spend that money on some of that money on Paul Arriola, which was a good transfer. Salt Lake, Nashville, and Minnesota. Nashville are going to play a whole lot of games at home over the next few months, and Nashville will continue their climb. Let's not forget, they were on the road for months to begin the season because of the construction of Geodis Park. Geodis Park is open. It's beautiful. The biggest North American soccer-specific stadium. It is beautiful. And Montreal will be there very soon, next Wednesday, by the way. So if you're wondering why Nashville is important to keep an eye on, if you are a CF Montreal fan. Minnesota just above that red line, and then underneath that red line, the slide of Dallas, Texas team has started. Houston is now below that red line. Of course, Duane, it was never sustainable. All three Texan team above that red line, that was never going to stick because the Dynamo are going to figure out how to lose. That's what they do since the mid 2010s. Long gone are the days where the Dynamo were in the final and playing the Galaxy almost every year. That was a long time ago. But we're seeing that slide, and I wouldn't be surprised if Houston continues to fall. It was just a blip that was, I guess, a band-aid that was supported by the goal scoring, and when the goal scoring is gone, the point tally also.
Well, Pat Onstad has a project there, right? He just got started, so it's going to take some while. The reason Houston was so successful in the MLS 2.0 era is they sort of figured out the model, right? They figured out how to just get the right level of depth across the board, find college players that can do a job for themselves, and to fit in amongst maybe one good player.
That's true. Well, and cheap players. Look at who played and who was good in Houston. I think they're still there, but it was Bonilla Garcia, right? It was Ricardo Clark for the longest time. Those were their players and their core of players, not the superstars, but the core that was driving that team to their success. We saw a lot of players go through Houston since then, and it just hasn't been the same. And now Pat Onstad took over from Matt Jordan, so I guess you have to be either a Canadian goalkeeper or played for a Canadian team to be sporting director in Houston. But to me, yeah, they're going to continue their slide, and surely, soon enough, we'll have more than one Texan team outside it, and we'll see if Austin is sustainable. That is also the question. Can Austin keep their head above water? Which, by the way, I want to mention, Cecilio Dominguez has rejoined the team. He has been reinstated. There was a private investigations for the allegations that were done last month into sexual misconduct and sexual harassment and sexual abuse allegations. He was cleared of all wrongdoing, according to multiple sources, and he has rejoined Austin FC.
Fair enough, and that deserves to be mentioned. Quickly, just to get on the bingo card for a minute here, Soccer Today talks about teams that are more than 10 years old, should be one of our topics on there. Another reason Houston won back then is they had D-Row on under $100,000 a year. So, yeah, it's not the same league anymore, and they got to figure it out. And Pat Onstad has who also was a deal that they had going on too, because Canadians were cheap back then.
It's true. Oh yeah, they had André Hainaut for the longest time too. I remember. Oh, we're talking about like the Houston Dynamo of the early time where I started to follow MLS, which is 2011, before Montreal joined, and then of course 2012 Montreal joined. I was following this league like I've never followed any sports league before, which led to this. Now, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll do our Canadian Premier League preview, looking at week number 6 in the Canadian Premier League. We're going to look at the standings, all the games. We'll even wrap a little bow in the preliminary round of the Canadian Championship with the updated results, and we'll do that and more right here on Soccer Today.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And And we're back on Soccer Today. Kev Larme with Duane Rollins as we will preview week number 6 in the Canadian Premier League. Please take a second, subscribe to our YouTube page, as you cannot find a show with more exhaustive coverage of the Canadian Premier League, Major League Soccer, and the day-to-day operations of North American soccer. Duane and I have been doing it for almost a decade, and this is your place. So please hit that notification bell also to be aware of when we upload a brand new podcast. Duane, I think it's amazing that the CanPL are in the Canadian Championship. They're doing great things, but Valor lost to Vancouver. Vancouver finally eliminated a Canadian Premier League team in the Canadian Championship. I liked the fact that they're tongue-in-cheek enough to make fun of themselves. You know, back in the video games, Xbox days, there was like an achievement unlocked, and when you did something special, something pop up on the screen. Well, they did that, and it said, beat a Canadian Premier League team in the Canadian Championship. Achievement unlocked. Congratulations, Vancouver. You have achieved something.
They might even be set up to win the microwave plate if they were to drop themselves down permanently. But they'd have to beat Pacific first. The microwave plate, for the new listeners out there, is the nickname given to the trophy, given out to the shield, I should say, given out to the Canadian Premier League winner, which is called the North Star Shield. North Star Shield.
Yes, because it also looks like a microwave plate.
It looks like a microwave plate. Yeah, it's terrible. But
it looks a very, very fancy microwave plate, very thick one, but a microwave plate nonetheless.
Yes, I was talking to someone actually about it last night. Apparently, they were at the Forge Championship party in 2019, and everyone was passing around. Apparently, it's very heavy. So there you go.
Yeah, well, it has to be, and don't drop it on your foot, because then you might break your foot. That is also not great.
It's only a matter of time until someone drops the damn thing. There's no doubt.
Sure.
Anyway.
That's for sure. Speaking of the Canadian Championship, let's have a look at the updated results for this week. We talked about Guelph United and the Wanderers earlier this week. Atletico and York United winning on penalties, and Cavalry giving FC Edmonton a second straight defeat in El Clasico in just 3 days. Forge versus Outremont took place on Wednesday in Tim Hortons Field, and Forge won 2-0 against against the team representing the PLSQ, the Première Ligue de Soccer du Québec, which was the Griffon of Outremont-Mont-Royal in the PLSQ. Vancouver, speaking French now, Vancouver contre Valor, Duane, c'est une bonne game. That was a good game, okay? Vancouver 2, Valor 0, and Vancouver finally beat a Canadian Premier League team, and they're happy about it, and they're moving on to other things, but that's your updated scores in the Canadian Championship. It's going to be a fun second round in just a few weeks. Well, next week, 2 weeks.
Yeah. Quick thought. Outremont, that was the Forge's second goal was in stoppage time, second half stoppage time. So it was really a 1-0 game with them pushing forward. So good for them. Good for both amateur teams this year, or semi-pro teams, I should say, getting the opportunity to play against the pros. Hopefully some of them get some contracts out of this. And I think it shows that the overall level of the bottom of the pyramid is getting better and better each year in Canada.
It's true. We're really seeing the teams, Blainville a couple years, really pushing York. But this time around, you're right, Outremont, maybe the score does not reflect their true battle at that game. And Guelph United versus HFX was a bit closer than 2-0, but not as close as maybe Outremont did. But that's interesting. I do want to now move on to the Canadian Premier League because it's week number 6 in the CanPL. And we have a couple of interesting games to talk about because Forge has been busy this year in the Canadian Championship, in the CONCACAF Champions League stemming from last year's CONCACAF League, but in their own league, in the Canadian Premier League, it hasn't been easy. And they're going to have to turn things around before it gets too late. Cavalry has already done so. So to me, that's the interesting aspect here. Cavalry has already moved back up of that red line, and they're going to play the Wanderers on Sunday at 2 p.m. That will be an interesting game. Valor and York is Sunday at 5 p.m. So that one will be a good game also. And of course, tomorrow, Forge Atletico, Pacific FC Edmonton. What game really gets you going this weekend in the CanPL?
You just mentioned Forge needs to get moving, and obviously Halifax has played pretty well this year. So that is an interesting one there as well. I do wish Forge would learn the lesson of York, and I know Forge fans and CanPL fans are not going to like what I'm about to say here, but when you're in the GTA region or the Golden Horseshoe region, if you prefer for Hamilton, don't schedule against TFC. That's dumb. You're taking away potential fans. But nonetheless, I guess maybe they couldn't find another time. They couldn't have played it earlier. They couldn't have played it later in the night. I don't know. Regardless, it seems like an oversight to try and take on a team that's been established for 10 years before you in your market.
Well, I agree, but I also can understand that you got to do things for your own fans and for your own self. And sometimes if it's better for your own game day operations and everything else and your sponsors to have it at a certain time, I can also understand that you can't just always rely on somebody else's timetable. So it could be a bit of both, but that could be interesting. Here's the table in the CanPL, Duane. Pacific FC still first, but York United second, 4 points behind Pacific. This could turn out to be what we call in Jeopardy term a runaway, Duane. I think Pacific might run away with the league this year. York United second, Cavalry third already. They were bottom of the league just a week and a half ago. And how quickly things can change with 2 straight victory in the league. HFX fourth, Atletico fifth, Valor Forge is seventh. Forge only 4 points, but that can change really quickly. And FC Edmonton still looking for a first win in the 2022 Canadian Premier League season.
Yeah, I said Halifax. I meant Ottawa. They're playing, and Ottawa had to play pretty well early. And Ballou's actually, I should give a note to Ballou. He's actually
playing
played
well,
pretty well.
Yeah, that's what I've been told too. And it's he's playing well without necessarily getting the box score to his favor. There's no secondary assist, and Ballou's playing well in a non-superstar role, but that's okay. You need. It's like an injury, but the injury is to his professional career. And now his professional career needs to learn how to run before you sprint. He's learning how to walk. Now it's almost time to run, and soon he'll be sprinting. And he'll be, of course, it's a metaphor here, and he'll be one of the best players in the league, I believe.
Yeah, look, I've said it before. There's 3 different types of players that the CanPL can serve. They can serve players that are very young and are looking to move up to a higher level. They can serve veterans that want to finish their career at home. And I think there's that third in-between level that Ballou kind of fits, and that are guys that were at a level and slipped down and want to get back to that level. That's kind of a unique situation, but there's a few of them out there that meet that description. If he continues to play well, he has done things at the Major League Soccer level. He did do enough to get noticed by Barcelona and Barcelona B at any rate at one point when he was a teenager. There's no reason to say he can't get back. He's still young enough that he has opportunity, but you've got to take it. You've got to grab it. And what we're hearing so far is that he's done that, and maybe he's even finding a different part of his game. So certainly that'll be something to watch this weekend as well. Lots of sports to watch this weekend, Kevin, as you well know, as you're preparing for a lot of stuff yourself. But it should be a busy day around here, and the TV. I'm going to try and enjoy the sunshine in between getting these games in.
I don't know what you're talking about. Are you talking about a certain game number 7 in Toronto against another hockey team for the 10th consecutive game that Toronto could eliminate another hockey team that they failed? Because they're 0-9 right now. So we'll see if Toronto becomes 0-10 tomorrow in game number 7. Welcome to Kevin Talks Hockey, which I guess could happen one day. You never know. Yeah, would you listen to me talk about hockey?
I'm not a Leafs fan, as people know, so I'm saying this completely neutral. If you watch that last night's game and think it was a choke at the Leafs, you've created your own narrative in your own damn head.
Teams are good sometimes, right? And other teams are also good. And, overtime is also overtime, and there's only so much you could do.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a bit of a weird goal. The goaltending could have been better. Again, I'm not cheering for the Leafs. I'm just not, as soon as the game ended, unlike the other people, didn't throw anything. I just turned it off like a bad.
And here's the corrected Canadian Premier League schedule. It was a little wrong on it. It's like sometimes what happens when you try to build a graphic too quickly. Here is HFX Cavalry Sunday at 2 and Valor York Sunday at 5 p.m. And all those games, of course, you can find them on One Soccer, the soccer platform, and you can find those Canadian Premier League game there. We're not paid to talk about One Soccer, but it's a worthy service if you want to watch the Canadian Premier League. It's also the only place you can watch the Canadian Premier League. But on that note, Duane and I will get ready for Monday when we come back and break it down. All these games from a statistical, analytical, and also jovial perspective, because it's important to be happy in life. Until then, I invite you to subscribe to our podcast, which is available everywhere you find your favorite podcasts: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and of course Spotify, the juggernaut right now. And we're available at all those places. Advertising opportunities are available here. You can contact us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com, and of course you can find a way to support us financially by going to patreon.com/sportspodcastingnetwork, and your support has been greatly appreciated over the years. As always, until Monday, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kev Larme. We wish you a great soccer.